All right, we've got the power panel standing by to talk about everything that happened on day 16 of the election campaign, but we're going to begin with a look at the markets. This is where the main U.S. indexes landed after a roller coaster day. They came into this week after their biggest two-day losses since March of 2020 when the COVID-19 shutdowns began. Peter Armstrong is a CBC senior business correspondent, and he is in Toronto. So, Peter, quite a bit of fluctuation today. I mean, what do we make of what we're seeing on the markets?
Yeah, it's been nice to have just this last little 45 minutes or so to catch my breath after an incredibly volatile and, frankly, David, kind of weird day. That, like, the sell-off began in Asia, it ripped through Europe, and then all the futures markets here were showing we were going to see another sharp sell-off on North American markets. It opened down substantially. Like the NASDAQ was down 5 or 6%, the S&P was down 4%, the Dow plunged like 1,000 points at the open. And then right around 10 o'clock, and this is just like to give you an example of what markets are doing, around 10 o'clock this morning, a social media account that everybody on Wall Street kind of follows, but it's an anonymous account, posts this thing that says the White House is considering this 90-day pause on tariffs and with everybody except for China to just kind of give a break and give everybody a chance to start negotiating. Well, CNBC, the financial news channel, they ran it. Reuters ran it. Markets sort of just gobbled it up because it's the greatest thing that they've been waiting to hear for 3 days of trading. And markets that were down sharply shot up, bounced all the way back into positive territory before anybody thought to say, well, hold on a second, what's the source on this? And when they did, they found out there was no truth to it at all. The White House says it's completely fake news. You had the president speaking, this is hours after this incident, saying, no, we're not even looking at that. And sure enough, markets sharply sell back off again. The sell-off resumes. And then slowly over the course of the day, you get the sense that investors are just so searching for some clarity and some sense that they still don't believe that Trump is really going to see this through. So where is the bottom here? If there is a deal in the offing, can we get in now? Markets ended the day. The NASDAQ was in positive territory. The S&P and the Dow were down, but only down slightly.
Okay, so what do we watch for? Because, you know, Peter, I watched the president today, and it's like tariffs are in place. They may go up, they may not. They will stay in place, they're permanent, but they might not be. And there could be negotiations, but my policies won't change business, so feel free to invest. So the policy of the moment isn't even clear. So the chaos and the mixed messaging from the markets, what do we watch for over the rest of this week?
Well, I think tomorrow is going to be crucial because this next round of tariffs, they all kick in at midnight tomorrow night. So, you know, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has said that they've got more than 50 countries that have come to the White House that are calling the White House, coming to them to try to make some kind of a deal. But as you say, what might that deal be? Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel was sitting in the Oval Office with the president today, and on the morning they announced these tariffs last week, Israel said, that's it, we're going to wipe out, we're going to eliminate all of our tariffs. They got slapped with a 17% tariff. He reiterated that promise today, and Trump said, I don't know, maybe we'll take a look at it. So there's no promise that tariffs alone are enough. And Peter Navarro was on CNBC talking about this earlier this afternoon, or in fact this morning, saying tariffs aren't even what we're talking about. If you eliminate all your tariffs, that's like the tiniest first step. We're looking at how you tax stuff. It is so much deeper than that. And so there's no real sense of what it might be. So I think what everybody is looking for is some kind of a deal with somebody. I think Israel might be the first out of the gates to try to get close to something. And then they can use that as some kind of an example or a model for everybody else. But until we get that, I think all this volatility, these swings up and swings down, are going to be just kind of the norm.
He tariffed an island full of penguins. I don't know how to apply rational analysis to this. Thanks for trying with us. That's the CBC senior business correspondent, Peter Armstrong. Okay, we're going to begin there with the power panel. We've got Rob Russo. He is the Canada correspondent for The Economist. Rachel Siegel is a former director of policy in Stephen Harper's government and the co-host of the Beyond a Ballot podcast. And here with me in studio, Jonathan Kalis. He was a Quebec advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And Jordan Leichnitz is a former NDP strategist. It's good to see you all on one of the weirdest financial Mondays. Rob, why don't we start with you? I don't know what's going to... I'm not going to actually do market and economic analysis, but, you know, people hoping the Conservatives, for instance, that maybe Trump would stop being the dominant thing sort of in the conversation. How do you think they feel after this today? Because it just seems that even if he doesn't take direct action, the consequences of his actions are just radiating throughout everything.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you've got money in a pension fund, if you have an RSP, if you have an RESP, you can't go too far and too deep into the news without a barf bag. It was a roller coaster today, but the ride has been down and down at a vertiginous level. And I'm in an area of the country. I'm in Vancouver today. I'm going to head into the interior in a little while, and everybody is worried and talking about what happens on softwood lumber, because he's about to more than double the tariff that he's put on softwood lumber, which is it's a huge industry in British Columbia, and a huge industry when it comes to people who want to build homes or anything else in the United States. It's inflationary. People are scratching their heads. There's dread, there's fear, and there is mystification. How do you negotiate with a man who, when countries respond in kind, let's take China, for instance.
Right.
We'll see your 34%, we'll put 34% on as well. And then he responds with, I'll see your 34% and I will raise you 50%. No one knows how to negotiate with that. And no one knows how to deal with it, including people who backed him. Somebody like Bill Ackman, the head of the Pershing Square investment fund, who has turned tail on Mr. Trump and has said he's gone too far. He's killing the markets, and he might be favoring the bond market as well, is what he's doing.
Yeah, Bill Ackman is tweeting through the pain right now in a way that I didn't expect. Rachel, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I know, the common wisdom in this election is if Trump remains the ballot question, it favors Mark Carney. It's only Monday, the beginning of week 3, but how do you think this affects the solidity of that ballot question right now as we get near the midway point?
Well, I think that Canadians will get to a point where they're asking, how do we negotiate with such volatility? And really, you can't. I mean, we're exhausted of the back and forth of the last few days, last few weeks, last few months. And so I think that the thing that Pierre is doing right is that he's talking about putting Canada first and building our economy, that we will come from a place of strength and not weakness when it comes to negotiating with Donald Trump. They can fight all they want about who's better, whose personality is better to deal with the President of the United States. At the end of the day, it's about domestic policy in Canada and how we position ourselves at home after the last 10 years of a crumbling economy. And so I think for the Conservatives today, this is really the message that they're trying to get out, is that they have a plan for Canadians. We saw Pierre Poilievre in northern British Columbia today talking about resource development and getting pipelines in the ground to support the economy long term. I think we'll hear more of that message, and ultimately Canadians will go to the ballot box and say, everyone can fight with Trump, but who's going to do something for me within my own borders?
Jono, how do you see it? Because it seems that when Trump is front and center, your crowd does well. I mean, how do you see this affecting the campaign at the beginning of week 3?
Well, now that we've entered this volatility in the stock market, I mean, it's been like that from the beginning of the year, but now it really is dramatic. And yes, we were expecting Black Monday, and it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be when we woke up this morning. That's what we're left with is good news. It's not just, Canadians from across the country go, well, I'm not in the auto sector, or I don't work in softwood lumber, or I'm not in aluminum and steel, so I haven't been impacted. I'm not going to be laid off. I guess things will be okay. Now it's my savings have just disappeared, or they're half of what they were a week ago. So it's now really starting to impact everybody. And why are people, at least in polls and when they answer questions, why is there a connection to Mark Carney? It's that he doesn't end every sentence with, let's put Canada first for a change, but he comes off as this sort of boring, serious banker guy who actually understands what this is all about, who sees all the pieces moving, who has experience, like real world experience in dealing with crises, with these kind of crises. It's not about grievance. It's not about having good one-liners. It's not just about a CV. He has a plan. He talks about it. He sees how all this is intertwined and is giving you reassurance that he's going to get through it. He's going to help us get through it. He doesn't paint this rosy picture that everything's going to be fine. He says, no, this is going to be tough, but I'm going to help us through it. I have a plan, and it's the reassurance right now that's making a difference.
Jordan, what's your view of where things stand now that the market effect is gone kind of topsy-turvy?
Yeah, I think this is bad news for the Conservatives for sure, because this is exactly what we talked about last week when we talked about some of the opportunities that Trump would have to reinsert himself into the campaign. And we're like less than a week out from the announcement of the tariffs, and already there's now this roller coaster up and down based on rumors, based on nothing, and that's materially impacting people's investments. And I think John makes a really important point that's exactly bang on, which is that this type of market movement actually makes the personal impact of what Trump is doing extend beyond the sectors that have been immediately impacted by the tariffs.
Right.
This is now everybody's business. This is something everybody is feeling in their own lives. And it's making people feel, I think, first and foremost, concerned, afraid, and they're looking for a steady hand and leadership. And so it's maybe not a surprise in that scenario that they're turning more towards Mark Carney and away from Pierre Poilievre, because the truth is that that's not a feeling of grievance. That's not about what happened in the past. People are looking for somebody to provide some leadership for what's going to happen in the future.
Right. Okay. Look, I want to show you what one premier said today and what was said about one premier in the last little while, because in response to these tariffs, Ontario is giving businesses a break.
We're just going to postpone people having to pay their taxes and take the burden off them, for companies, I should say, for about roughly 6 months, I believe.
So Premier Doug Ford has given businesses a deferral on some provincial taxes. He says this will be about $9 billion worth of relief. Meanwhile, Liberal leader Mark Carney, he's getting a bit of criticism for poking fun at Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. This was as he takes his campaign out west. Here's Carney speaking at a rally last night, and then we'll show you the reaction from Danielle Smith.
We're fighting them on Fox News, which is what they understand. We're sending Doug Ford onto Fox News to show them that we're not messing around up here. And we're going to send Danielle next. Maybe we won't send her. Maybe we'll send Danielle. No, maybe we won't. We won't send Danielle.
Well, I've noticed this with progressive men, how much they talk about how much they support women until they meet a strong conservative woman. And so this is a pretty consistent type of approach that I've seen, not only from the current Prime Minister, but the former one as well. And the attitude is, sit down and shut up. Well, I don't shut up.
All right, Rachel, I wonder, what do you think of that? I mean, Doug Ford has become this ally of Mark Carney. I think it's kind of safe to say, because you know what he said there about Ford going on Fox News. Some people tried to say he was being dismissive of Ford, and Ford's like, he just texted me. Of course I'm going on Fox News. But the Danielle Smith situation, that ain't going over so well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so much for the all-Canada approach when you're trying to throw premiers under the bus to make the crowd laugh at your fundraiser in Victoria. I just listened to the other two talk about the professionalism of Mark Carney, and here he is making fun of the two premiers that have made leaps and bounds in these negotiations, including Doug Ford, who took over for the previous Liberal leader at the time we needed it the most, when his cabinet and his government were falling apart. So I don't think that's a very good look for Mark Carney, but also going back to kind of what Jono was saying, today at the wildest day on the stock market, I want to juxtapose the two leaders. So we had Pierre Poilievre talking about resource development and growing the economy. We had Mark Carney out talking about building parks and free summer vacations in Canada's parks. at a point, Canadians are going to say, how do we get out of this economic mess? And when you look at the history of terrible markets, for example, 2008, when we had Prime Minister Harper, we had Canada's Economic Action Plan, where we invested in resources, we invested in transportation, infrastructure projects, and Canada fared really well. Who today is of the two leaders are talking about that? That's Pierre Poilievre, not Mark Carney. And I think that as we continue the next couple of weeks of this campaign, and there is an eternity left in this race, that message will become clearer and clearer to Canadians as they say, this instability in the United States is hurting me, it's hurting my pocketbook, it's hurting my family, it's hurting future generations, and it's time that we invest in the leader that is going to invest in this country long term.
Jenna?
Well, I mean, that's just too easy, Rachel. You just left it out there that, in 2008, Pierre Poilievre was, I don't know, a backbench MP. Maybe he was a parliamentary secretary with no role. And Mark Carney was working with Prime Minister Harper and the Finance Minister Flaherty to get us through it. That means he has experience, he knows what he's doing, when Pierre was doing nothing. So I think that's what Canadians are reacting to. That's what they want to hear is the steady hand, the experience, and what exactly is Pierre Poilievre, other than the grievance about everything that the Liberals have done wrong, what is the plan? He just keeps articulating the same 5 talking points, but there's no plan. And he doesn't actually understand how the economy works because he's never actually worked in the economy.
I mean, there are specific promises to speed up resource development and pipelines and blast away environmental policy that he sees as a hurdle
to
be in the way, right? So it is
resource
extraction is speeding that up is a big part of the plan, right? Sorry, Rachel, quickly.
Seniors policies, tax cuts. Pierre Poilievre has been out there announcing something new every day. Mark Carney took days off of this campaign to sit in Ottawa and be Prime Minister, but Pierre has been out there talking about his long-term plan and his entire platform, and I think Canadians are starting to really clue into that.
Okay, Rob, and then Jordan.
Sure. Last week we criticized MPs because in the guise of trying to crack a joke, they ended up losing their jobs as nominees. At this moment, I think Mark Carney has won plaudits and won support because he's considered quite serious when it comes to the economy. I think that he's not auditioning for open mic night at Yuck Yucks. And he does himself no favors when he does this. This is off-brand for him, and it's off-brand in terms of his target as well. Tonight, Mr. Poilievre is going to have a huge rally in Edmonton. There's a reason why he's in Edmonton, though, because the Liberals are actually doing fairly well in Edmonton, and he's bringing out Stephen Harper because the Liberals are doing fairly well. And Alberta is not going to be doing fairly well over the next little while. The price of oil dipped below $60 a barrel for the first time in a long, long time today. Every dollar below $68 is $750 million less in revenue for the province of Alberta. So I think that was a clunker for Mr. Carney, and I think it risks stalling some of the momentum that he and his party have had, particularly around the city of Edmonton. Yeah. When he was doing well, that was off brand for